Hello there and welcome back to the studio today. Here's an image of the painting that will be created in today's episode. We are going to be creating a Diego Velázquez master study. That's right, Diego Velázquez master study. Don't get it confused, it's not a master copy, it is a master study. So the purpose is going to be to create another type of paint along video. I'm going to do the best that I can to record as much of the footage as possible, given the equipment and all that stuff. So here is the t-shirt. So we actually have our very own t-shirt with the logo, with the Yupari Artist YouTube channel logo. And again, it is available on my website, all thanks to Lucy. Thank you so much again, Lucy. So yep, here is the t-shirt, and that's enough for the announcements. How about we get to the painting? So on the palette here, we've got a very simple color palette of titanium white, flake white, burnt umber, alizarin crimson permanent, cadmium red, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, ivory black, and neo McGill medium. So what I'm going to do now is put a little bit of odorless mineral spirits on a size 2 filbert bristle brush, and I'm going to use this. Is this even a filbert? No, it's a flat. Whatever. I'm using a size 2 bristle brush, okay, and I'm going to be creating a drawing color. And by the way, if you are interested in knowing exactly what materials I'm using and or purchase the same type of materials through my Amazon affiliate links, just know that if you do purchase from those links, Amazon will pay me a small amount in return. So thank you so much if you decide to do that. So I just want about, I don't know, like 2% mineral spirits, okay? 2% mineral spirits, a very, very tiny amount of mineral spirits. And I just want the paint to be a little bit runny, but not, liquidy, so it's not dripping off the side of the palette. So this consistency should be about good. And here is an image of the actual Diego Velázquez master painting. Now this is the original painting. This is a photograph of the original painting. Just know that I won't have that picture, I won't have that picture linked in the description box down below, because I did the best that I could to find the most accurate photograph of that painting as I possibly could. But on the internet, with a quick Google search of Diego Velázquez self-portraits, you can probably find one just like mine or better. So feel free to follow along with me now. At this point, go ahead and get your drawing materials, your graphite pencils, your sketchbook, your charcoal, or even your oil paints if you have your oil paints ready, and join me along with this paint along. So let's go ahead. We're gonna go ahead and get started with the composition. Now the picture that I found, I have a feeling that it's kind of contrasted, like the contrast might be a little bit too bright, but I'm just gonna work with what I have there. So I'm going to establish very quickly first kind of a guesstimation for where I want the top of the head to fit, and I'm going to stand back. So even after a preliminary mark like that, I'm going to stand back and kind of evaluate where I am in terms of the composition. So I want to make sure that I fit the the face, as well as the this article of clothing that he's wearing. So there is the little article of clothing. I don't think I mentioned it yet. So I'm going to be guiding you along this painting in a live talking style. So I'm going to be painting and talking at the same time, which again does kind of influence a little bit the outcome of the painting and the way that I narrate the footage. But I think it's for the best, because that way I can give you even more of the painting footage, as opposed to having to do, the painting and then like a 3-hour or whatever voiceover. Okay, so I just have a few basic marks, all right? And if you're following along with me, you can move faster if you would like to. I tend to be very slow. So the top of the head is somewhere about here, I'm assuming. Now I'm considering the hair. I can't really see this, to be honest, on the photograph that I have, but I'm guessing that the corner of the hair is here, and it might be matching up with the this little article of clothing. Forgive my ignorance. I don't really know what this is called. The white thing that he's wearing. If you know what it is, if you know what this is, please feel free to comment down below. And just go ahead and comment down below at this point. I would like to know how your day is going, and what's on your easel today. Or if, I guess it's obvious if you're drawing or painting along with me. as I said, when I switch to this schedule, I'm going to be spending much more time with the comments. So right after this is done, this is Saturday's video, so right after I'm done filming this, I'm going to head over to my computer and look at the comments from Wednesday's video. Okay, so now we're going to start to block in the face. I'm thinking about the negative space, okay? I'm thinking about like how much negative space I'm going to have over here. I think that there's a little bit of the hair over here, but I'm not really sure. I think about this much the head should do. And I'm going to get pretty quiet, you know, when I'm in, you know, deep focus. So feel free to draw or paint along with me. Okay, so we got the bottom of the chin over here. Okay. So at this point, you know, I'm just kind of getting used to the model. I'm kind of just getting to know the model. And I'm going to treat this like I would any other painting. You know, I'm very intimidated, I'm not going to lie, at the moment with, you know, staring at this great masterpiece. A picture of it, the Diego Velázquez. It's kind of intimidating to look at such a great work of art and then try to study it. Alright, so the angle of the eye is somewhat like this. Of course, that's an exaggeration. It's like that. So that's going to be a little bit of an indication for where the eyes are going to fit relatively. I'm going to start by drawing out the eye sockets and the nose. So I'm going to start off with the main triangle, okay? And you can do this with graphite as well, or charcoal. So if you're following along with me, just look for a simple shape for the eye sockets. Beware of any kind of details too early on. You don't need them. And Velázquez is really one of the best to look at. You know, Sargent himself did Velázquez master copies, you know, as he was training. And if Sargent revered Velázquez so much, I mean, that should be enough, really, to know that we are, you know, observing a true master's painting. All right, bottom of the nose. Okay, so here's the main triangle that I'm talking about, okay? One point here, another point here, another point here, connect the 3 points, and you have a triangle. And the main triangle is such that, you know, everything else is around it, you know, this area here for the forehead, the chin, the mandible, all of that's easy to move relative, now easy, right, relative to the eyes and the nose. Oof, my hands are almost shaking. It's like Velázquez is looking at me, man. It's like, what are you doing with my image? What a way to record yourself, though, in history. I mean, that look, I mean, you're seeing the photo reference. I mean, that is confident. You know, even to this day, you know, the pose and the way that he's looking at the camera, or he would have been looking at the camera, you know, if he were in modern day, you know, really is that of someone of substance. Alright, so enough rambling. So the angle of the eye is somewhat like this. I'm giving myself room to work with, you know, using simple shapes, right? Simple straight lines and angles. Any kind of mistake, like I usually say, keep your shape simple and easy so that when the time comes to make changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. So now the mustache is really going to be an important feature in this drawing. But again, I'm going to establish first the eyebrows. And the reason I'm looking at the eye socket and the eyebrows right now is just so I can continue to relate these shapes to one another. Well, relate them to this. So I'm going to go from here to here, then all around. I'm even going to consider the dark for the hair now. And the odorless mineral spirits will eventually evaporate into the air, if that's what it does. To be honest, I'm not really sure. What it does eventually is it'll settle in and kind of fade into the canvas, so that's why you want to use a little bit of odorless mineral spirits for your drawing brush. Just thinking about this abstract shape. We have the dark for the iris. Still thinking about that angle. So the width of the forehead is going to kind of be a thing. So what I'm going to do is get a separate brush here. Going to put a little bit of odorless mineral spirits on it. And I'm going to use this to help push the shapes around. And in terms of drawing, I'm going to spend a long time here. And if I'm too slow for you, you can feel free to move along. You can scroll through as you like with this video. You can even fast forward me with, YouTube actually allows you to fast forward videos now, I've seen. So we're just thinking of the shape of the forehead. This is kind of going to work as a really kind of quick underpainting also, though not in the traditional sense, because I'm not going to wait for this to completely dry, but it will settle in after some time. So this is a completely valid way of approaching the start of this master study. So I'm thinking of the shape of the glabella, thinking of the distance for the glabella. I'm thinking it's a little more compressed. I'm gonna push that shape in a little more. And I'm constantly, I don't know if you can see this, I'm constantly drying the brush, just to manage how much odorless mineral spirits is on the brush. You don't want too much. Alright, so again, I'm going to follow through with the dark all down here. And the more I thin out the paint, the more it's going to glare. I don't know if it's going to glare on your side. I do have the camera at an angle with respect to the painting, so it shouldn't glare that much for you, but just know that that's always a possibility. Alright, what am I even doing? I can't even see this in the photograph. I'm just kind of guesstimating where this part of the hair is going to go. But I just want this shape to relate to this. Alright. So now, I'm going to put in the dark for the nostril. I'm going to move the nose up. Like I said, keep your shape simple and easy. I have a feeling that the nose might have been too long relative, you know, it was here, now it's here, relative to the shapes. There is so much to learn from this painting. Okay, so the nose, right, the outline here is not correct, but that's okay. What I'm more focused on is the distance from here to here, and from here to here. So this distance, okay? What we're focused on. A little bit of the structure for the side of the face. Thin out the paint a little bit more. So a little bit of the mineral spirits. And again, it'll just evaporate or dissipate or whatever the word is. All right, so now it's time to put in, actually first, I'm gonna continue to push this shape up with the eraser brush. Dabbing the eraser brush dry a little bit. Gotta keep these shapes simple. I imagine Velázquez also kept his shape simple like this, though we can't really know. But, you know, I really don't think Velázquez started with the eyelash and then worked his way around like that. Somehow, I don't think that's what he did. Alright, so let's relate now this shape. I'm using a diagonal, and diagonally it goes past the eye, but the eye, what I'm going to do now is switch to a dry brush, see if I can push the paint around a little bit without using mineral spirits. Again, this is just a dry brush. So if you got a bunch of bristle brushes, you're definitely going to need them. The more beat up the bristle brush, the better. The better it'll work for dry brushing, which I guess is what you would call this. I'm gonna get, if I even have one, I'm sure I have one around here somewhere, an even more beat up bristle brush. I have to move around to get it. All right. So this one is even more beat up. Now I don't want a perfect outline, you know, I'm not too interested in getting a perfect outline. I want enough information that I'm comfortable with to continue to build. So let's see, where'd that dry brush go? Okay. You know, I'm not so interested in the, you know, the exact shape of the eye. More, I'm focused in the placement of it at this point. Tear duct goes here. Okay, all right, so now we can return to where we were. This needs to go. All right. That mustache is kind of gonna bother me, just because I don't know, I've never painted a shape like that before. Wonder if Salvador Dali got some inspiration from the mustache. kind of softening the edge around it, just because that was starting to bother me. Covering all this with the mineral spirits. Alright, so now let's look at the mouth. So I'm going to look at the bottom, this shadow. It kind of fades in with that. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I'm going to try to show you as much of the footage as possible, and guide you along in a kind of a paint-along fashion. What it really means is that I'm inviting you to paint with me. A lot of this stuff I'm going to be figuring out as I go, so I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. But right now what I'm doing is I'm pushing the chin up a little bit relative to the mouth. Just looking at shape. So I think that that's going out a little too much. I think he has a softer chin. Let's use the dry brush. Spread a tone here. The dry brush really just helps control the shapes a little bit. I'm going to move this up. I should use the eraser brush. Is that even the eraser brush? Where's my brush? I keep confusing these brushes. Alright. Yeah, there's way too much showing for the chin. So I'm going to stand back. So if you're drawing or painting along with me, make sure, I invite you to stand back. Every time I stand back, you stand back. Looking at the camera, every time I stand back, I also check the camera. I don't want to repeat what happened on Wednesday. So I'm going to be monitoring the camera as much as possible, so I don't lose any footage. Though if I do, I apologize in advance. And again, this is just to show you how much care I take with the shapes in this kind of simplistic fashion. A lot of care is taken with these shapes. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something kind of drastic here. So I'm going to get another brush, a bigger one, and just the burnt umber and the odorless mineral spirits, I'm going to cover the dark. So what I want is for this to fade eventually, in 20 minutes or however long it'll take for the paint to, or the mineral spirits to just evaporate. That's also why you don't want to leave your lid open with the mineral spirits. And I used a much thinner application of mineral spirits over here so that it wouldn't drip onto the face. See how it's dripping? That's okay. I anticipated that it would do that. You've got to know your materials. Alright, so now with the eraser brush, I see that I can move this up. Keep your shapes just like this, if you can. I'm not interested in too many values. Though I am going to use a slightly darker line down here. We're going to go over this with a darker color eventually, but just to differentiate where that goes. Now to cover all of this. So again, I'm taking a kind of different tactic with this. I'm playing it very, very safe with the drawing. One of the things about Velázquez is he is definitely a master draftsman. I mean, most of the painters back then really were exceptional draftsmen or draftspeople. Now with the dry brush, I'm going to do the best that I can to spread a tone on the shadow side of the face, just like that, so we get an idea of the tonality. Now we're going to continue to push the shapes. Starting again with the concavity of the eye socket, or basically just the eyes. I'm very careful though to make sure that I don't confuse my dry brush with my eraser brush. Just using this to soften. This is the dry brush. Okay. Now back to the drawing brush. Still feel like there's a discrepancy here with the chin. So I'm gonna just go with my intuition here. Move this up. For some reason I'm gonna bounce from here to here. I don't know why, but I am. Dry brush again to get a little more control. Now I'm going to go back to the drawing brush, restate this dark, the iris, concavity of the eye socket. Alright, so what I'm going to do something risky. I'm going to try to dry it a little bit, very little odorless mineral spirits, and I'm going to just kind of sketch in the shadow. I'm doing as much drawing as I possibly can with monotone, or shoot, monochrome. Just single color. now it's gonna... Alright, I'm gonna get the dry brush actually. I'll do something drastic again. Just to get a little bit of a tone here for the chin. I'm not trying to render anything. Is this even the dry brush? Where's my brush? I don't think that's the dry brush. Whoops. This is the dry brush. But now it's going to have some mineral spirits on it. Oh, well, whatever. See how I keep bouncing around? Constantly keep relating everything. Oh yeah, so with the dry brush, let's try to get a little tone here. Now we're getting that look, I think. I don't know. So with the dry brush, I'm picking up some paint actually from the shadow to put in a tone here. So now I'm kind of using maybe one or two, I guess it's just one really, tone in the light. Gonna look at this little shape for the chin. And the idea here, allow me to reiterate, is that this will fade. Okay, it will fade into the canvas, which will act as an underpainting. But rather than having to wait for an underpainting with a lot of values to dry, I am, going to have to wait just maybe like 20 minutes or something for this to evaporate. Dry brush again. We're going to pull out a little bit of light for the lip. Again, the priority is in the light and dark shapes. The chiaroscuro, meaning the effect of light and dark. You really gotta squint your eyes too. I'm squinting my eyes. Gotta stand back. I'm squinting my eyes quite a bit to, get an idea of the shapes. Squinting your eyes really does help to eliminate detail. At this point, you don't need any detail. The difference between, say, the angle of the chin here, is slight. Whereas it's like this, I want to make it more like this. And at a certain point, I'm going to do as much as I possibly can, with just the simple tones, and then it's really going to be time for, color. But the color I'm going to use differently with this painting. Color is something I'm going to use to add texture, more or less. and to, of course, facilitate the drawing. If you haven't noticed, I tend to prioritize drawing a lot, as I'm sure Velázquez did. Yeah, his chin is much, much smaller than I originally thought. Gonna switch to the eraser brush. I'm going to push this up. I have a feeling that I'm cutting this clothing element too short, but just compositionally, I don't want it to run off the canvas, so I'm just gonna leave it like this. I think I used too much mineral spirits, so I'll move that up. What's going on here? I can't even tell. It looks like his neck kind of blends into this. It's just, I think Velázquez might have done this too. When in doubt, blur it out. He might have been in doubt. I doubt Velázquez was ever in doubt, but I'm sure, you know, he was human, right? But yeah, when in doubt, blur it out. I don't know what's going on there, so I'm going to blur it. And now I think I have too much width for the hair or the face, so that means I might need to push this. Never mind. I'm going to use the drawing brush, the smaller drawing brush. Now at this point, this is actually starting to fade. See this? I can just run my hands through this, and it barely gets on my hands. I get a little bit, but I can't wipe this down to the tone of the canvas anymore. That's what I want. It's starting to evaporate and dissipate into the air. Let's push this in. See how slight this is? I mean, it's a difference from this to this. And again, you asked for longer videos. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Huh, it's actually starting to look like Velázquez almost at this point. And within a matter of, I don't know, 10 or 20 minutes, this will evaporate. The odorless mineral spirits will evaporate, and eventually we'll be ready to get into the color. When we get into color, I want to make sure that all of this is as close as I can possibly get it. I'm going to use the dry brush, spread a little tone. Oh, that's the eraser brush. Spread a little tone over here. I'm going to stand back. That's looking, I guess close enough. I still feel like I have too much width here. Might be a matter of pushing that in. Whoops. And try as much as you can not to measure. Not that there's anything wrong with measuring, but this is a skill building exercise. So try as much as you can to just use your eye. I'll push this in even more. So even this, right? This wasn't a straight line. This actually goes out more this way, whereas this one goes out more that way. I wouldn't have noticed that if I didn't stand back and squint. Just have to push this shape up again. Kind of relating this point to this point, okay? Alright, so that was pretty much the block in for this Diego Velázquez master study. Yes, the block in did take me much longer than my usual block ins, and hopefully if the equipment worked, you have seen all of the footage for the block in. Now we're going to move into the next stage, so we're going to move into the large plane rendering stage, or we can just call it the large plane stage, or whatever we want to call it. So we're going to mix up some colors now, and so with a clean and dry bristle brush, so repeat after me, clean and dry bristle brush. This is a Robert Simmons bristle brush, one of my favorite brushes. Again, link in the description box down below. So we're going to start with the color and value web, and I'm going to not use any medium for the first application of color. So this is just paint and a pretty good quality bristle brush, okay? So repeat after me. No medium at this point. Nada. Nothing. No medium at all. So just mixing up a little bit of the reds and then the green here to kind of get a neutral tone. And now we're going to work our way up the color value web. So yellow ochre, cadmium red, and it's important to have the best quality paints possible. I use all artist grade oil paints. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start to introduce some of the middle tones. So the way I'm trying to mix up these colors, okay, I'm blurring my eyes at the image, and they're kind of closer to the yellowish gray pink. That's how I see these colors. So we're going to use a healthy amount of flake white. It's a lot of flake white. in the middle tones, and flake white. Okay, you want flake white in the middle tones. And if you don't have flake white, there are flake white replacements out there. You know, Gamblin, I'm pretty sure it's Gamblin. Gamblin has a flake white replacement. You can also use another type of white that's supposed to be similar to this, such as a zinc white. But I really do prefer the flake white. Now what you want is a lot of paint. See, that's a lot of paint. So you want to have a very, very thick mixture of paint. This is almost like melted butter, but much thicker than melted butter. I used a very, very insane amount of paint. And you really need a bristle brush to pick up this much paint, okay? Because we're not messing around here with Velázquez. Velázquez definitely used, I'm pretty sure he used a lot of thick mixtures of paint. Now we're going to move our way up the color value web. So with the yellow ochre, we're going to now use the titanium white. And just a little bit of it. A little bit of titanium white goes a long way. Now back to the flake. Back to the titanium, but just a little bit of titanium. We want mostly flake white. We want mostly lead-based paints on this master study. And again, if you don't want to use lead-based paints, there are replacements out there for this. You don't have to, but I would. A little more of the titanium white, yellow ochre. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add a rail, a cool rail to this. But since you know, I like the color that I have on this brush, I'm probably going to jump right into the large planes with this brush. I'm going to get a different brush. Let's see, how about the drawing brush? The drawing brush did have a little bit of mineral spirits on it, and I'm aware of that. But, you know, it's mostly dried off now. The mineral spirits, that is, not the brush. The brush is not completely clean, okay? What I want is a gray web, a gray color value web. So this is a cool rail. I refer to these as rails. See how I'm mixing it on the side? And then eventually, a little bit of burnt umber. And then eventually I will kind of blend it into the color value web, and I will get colors such as the sclera and things like that. Let me show you what I mean by that. So now we are in the lighter area, okay? We're in the lighter area. So basically gray and a little bit of flesh tone here equals sclera. So this is probably what I'm going to take to get the color of the sclera. And now we're just going to mix this for some of the cooler dark middle tones, okay? So when I refer to cooler dark middle tone, I will be taking right from this. Now we're going to put this brush away. If I have any other bristle brushes that I didn't use, I don't think I used this one, so we'll use this for the warmer color value web rail. So we're just going to move it onto the side here. A little bit more red. And again, no medium, none, nada, nothing. Hope I don't offend anyone by saying nada. My family is from Peru, okay, so I'm allowed to say that. Okay, so titanium white, so no medium. Yeah, my family is from Lima, Peru, in case you were curious. Alright, so now we have the pink, okay, the pink. Now we're going to just kind of lightly blend it with these colors, and again, no medium. So when I want something that's warmer, lighter, or warmer, darker, this is where I will take it from. And that's it. Alright, so now it's time to get into the large planes. So I'm going to be using 2 bristle brushes to do this job. So I'm going to start off with this area here. And again, no medium at all. So when you're painting in alla prima, or even if you're going to be layering, okay, use little to no medium in your first color notes, with your first color notes. So now more flake white, and I'm really trying to get this light, okay? I'm going for gold here. Much more flake white here. And I mean, that's just incredible what we can do with the flake white. I really want that texture to build. And that's probably going to be the thickest area in the painting. So now we're going to make it a little more pink. I believe there are also impasto mediums. What I am doing, you can refer to as painting impasto, meaning very, very thick. Though I've never tried them, but you are certainly welcome to try that. But the flake white, I think, really is my favorite option for what I'm doing there. And so I'm standing back once again just to make sure I pressed record on my camera and to you know, see how this value is working out. That is not you know, straight up white. It does have a little bit of flesh tone in it. So now it's going to get darker as we move towards there. Okay, all right, so now we're going to spread a darker tone, but still pretty light, okay? All through here. No medium at all. Alrighty then, so now I have to make a decision. Either I'm going to use this same brush or I'm going to switch. I think I'm going to use the same brush, more of the flake white. I'm going to go for the lightest areas. Okay, and I want the thickest amount of paint in the lighter areas. Okay. So right over here, again, see that? How much paint is on there? Might be too pink, so more yellow ochre. I believe Velázquez used a fairly limited palette with this, so I may even be using more colors than he did, but you know, I don't really know. If you have any idea of Velázquez's color palette, what colors he used, I would be so curious to know what colors he used. Please go ahead and type that down in the comments down below. Using a little bit of titanium white just to raise the value even more, but very little. Trying to keep the titanium white to a minimum. Don't want too much titanium white. That being said, I don't know if you can see, I am using a little, see the tiniest bit. Look, I used up all the flake white. I'm gonna have to put more. There. Going for the lights first. Just trying to build the texture. And like I said, I did say that I was going to approach this a little differently. And, you know, use the color to build texture. I think that's pretty good. A little bit lighter here. Okay, alright, so now what I'm going to do is use the other brush. Actually, first let me put more flake white on my palette. Alright, there is now more flake white on my palette, and I turned on turned off the autofocus, so here you can see I have two little things of flake white there. So again, I'm going to go for gold, the texture. There. I hope the camera is picking that up. Much more texture. This wouldn't work, okay? I really don't think this would work with synthetic brushes. That's why you really need good quality bristles for this. And good quality paints. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to use the other brush. And I'm going to stand back. Okay, so I'm going to use the other brush. Now I'm going to move down. Hopefully you can see this. I'm moving down. was my value. A little darker there. Darker and pinker. More pink. Darker over there. Now lighter, yet still darker than all of this. So lighter and pinker over here. Well, I guess it's a little bit darker relative to this, but I mean everything is. So I'm going to use the corner of the brush. I'm using a flat brush. I guess this is a useful thing about flat brushes. To put in this plane, trying to paint again as thick as humanly possible while still maintaining control. Sometimes it's hard to control the paint if it's too thick, but I think this is working out okay. It's working out all right. Now a darker tone, darker, cooler tone, a little bit more greenish, I think, so hopefully you can see this. Sap green into here. All right, darker over here. A darker tone there. All right, so now pinker, lighter over here. Well, it's lighter relative to that, but darker relative to this. Now pinker and darker. Darker relative to that. Dark for the nose. Still no medium, okay? I'll let you know when I do start using medium. And why? Alright, so a little bit darker and warmer again. Right here. Just to push the warmth a little bit. I'm going to leave the tone of the canvas there. Now we're going to switch back to the light brush. A lot of paint. Let this light travel down here. So I'm going to actually use a synthetic brush to pick up some of the paint from here and just push it over here. Create kind of a softer edge. Now I'm going to stand back. Make sure nothing is going completely crazy. Okay. Now darker and greener, more green for this shape here. And notice how I didn't go in with the shadows yet, the dark of the shadows. Because I'm trying to keep the tones relatively light. I'm trying to push the light as much as possible. I think that needs a little more yellow. A little more yellow ochre. And again, darker and more green. Whoops. Darker, more green there. Okay, going to push that shape up here. Pushing that green, probably a little too much. Put in some red there, darker red, just to chill or warm that color up. A little bit of a darker tone here. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Well, it shouldn't be a secret. I don't really think there should be any secrets, to be honest. I want information to be as easily accessible as possible to anyone. But in any case, gotta stop rambling. One thing that's really helping me with these values is the tone of the canvas. Notice how I'm utilizing the tone of the canvas as much as possible. And again, I toned it with burnt umber a long time ago, several weeks prior to filming. And the fact that I toned it with oil paint, that's also helping me quite a bit. Why? Because when you tone with oil paint, it grips very, very nicely. It grips the paint very nicely. A little bit of a darker tone underneath here. Darker relative to this, but lighter relative to this. Gotta keep the brush loaded with paint. So I'm going to switch back to the light brush, and a little discrepancy here with the chin. I'll move that down like so. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to put in more light using more flake white. Flake white is really the star. So flake white, yellow ochre. I definitely need this for these values, or for the texture. Still no medium, okay? Alright, gonna switch back to the darker brush. Darker, more pink, but still lighter relative to that. Okay, so now we're going to get another tone that is darker and more green. Whoops. So it's going to be darker relative to that, lighter relative to this. Alright, so now darker and a little warmer. I'm going to put in these turning planes. Right along the side there. Make sure that the paint is thick. Okay, you're painting along with me. No medium, okay? None. And if you've got the flake white, use it. Darker and a little bit in between pink and green, to be honest. This is a turning plane, so it's getting a little darker here, so that the values look like they're turning. So the planes look like they're turning because of the values. Darker here, a little bit more green. So I'm just going back and forth on the palette to get a lighter and lighter transition of tone as I go. Man, Velázquez is really pushing me to be better. Some more flake white, a lot of flake white. Okay, now we're going to take the same thing, just make it a little bit darker over here. You should be able to feel the texture of the paint as you're applying it, especially when you have the artist grade paints and you're using thick mixtures of paint. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is with a separate brush, let's see, do I have a clean brush? Is this one clean? That's clean enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the titanium white, hopefully you can see the titanium white somewhere over here, a little bit of the burnt umber, and no medium, still none. So titanium white and burnt umber. The burnt umber is just to make sure it's a fail-safe, really, just to make sure that we don't make something too light. I'm putting in that light for the whatever this element of clothing is called. I'm sorry, I don't know the name. But if you know the name of what this is, please comment down below. Okay, so we're going to put a little bit, hopefully you can see that, tiny little bit of ivory black. Okay, tiny little bit of ivory black for that darker, kind of cooler note. I think it also exists a little bit over here. Yeah, it should be just fine. Okay, now returning to the flesh tones. Gotta make sure I don't mistake my brushes. Okay, so I think that's the darker one. Oh dear, I think I just mistaked my brushes. Where's my brush? Okay, so we'll say this is the darker one. So now we're gonna start to put in a plane here. Okay, just a little bit darker here. Still no medium. Forgive me for my repetition. I just want to make it clear, because that's actually a very important thing to this painting, is the paint handling. Now lighter shade here, and we're still in the large plane stage. So it's a little less, the paint is a little less thick over here. A little less thick over here, but much thicker over here. Okay. All right, now we're going to switch back to the lighter values. So hopefully you can see this. A lot of flake white. Again, just trying to get the texture over there, over here, as much as humanly possible. I'm going to have to use a little bit of titanium white, but very, very little for here. to get this value. So I'm going to do something maybe a little drastic. So I'm going to switch to the middle tone brush, put a little bit of a lighter tone, and I'm going to go over the mustache a little bit so that it will look like the mustache was painted over the flesh tones. I think it'll just make it look a little more believable. And now a darker and warmer. For the lips. And again, Velázquez is an excellent source to look at for portrait painting. He doesn't really put that much in the features, not that much in the lips, not that much in the nose, but more focus in the large structure. So we're gonna go darker and, well, yeah, darker and much warmer. Should I say warmer and much darker? There. A little bit of a lighter shape. Okay. So it's lighter relative to this, but darker relative to this. Now we're going to switch to the flesh tone, lighter flesh tone. There. And now we're going to put in a little bit of a darker, greener tone. Using the same brush, just mixing into here. The bottom of the orbicularis oris. Now it's darker relative to this and relative to the chin. So we're going to go kind of in the middle tone range here. Large, bold and brave brush stroke, okay? Even though, you know, I'm not moving super fast like that. But these are kind of bold brush strokes relative to, you know, a more, you know, fearful brush mark. All right, so now I'm switching to a darker, warmer tone. Well, that's way too warm, so I'm going to cool it down a little bit. And you know how I'm doing that. It's my color value web. You know, if you struggle with flesh tones, if you struggle with color in portrait, I would recommend, see this here, practice mixing up your color value webs. You know, spend as much time practicing mixing up those color value webs. It really helps. Okay, so darker and a little warmer. Because when you're painting flesh tones, this is about as complicated as painting is going to get, I think. And I think, I don't know, to be honest, but you know, you're changing your value, you're changing your edge quality, you're changing your hues. And it's very complicated and difficult if you don't have, you know, an organized palette. Excuse me. So I'm actually going to make this darker. I have to keep standing back and relating these shapes to one another. So I just stood back and made sure my camera was still recording and to check these values. So I think that this is going to have to get a little bit darker. Right over here. Okay. And now it's going to slightly get lighter and pinker over here. All right, I'm going to have to use the lighter brush, or better yet, hold on, bristle brush. I mean, synthetic brush. To kind of blend the shape into here. Okay. Same thing here. Being very cautious with the edge quality. Now I gotta think about plane. Okay. There's a plane going this way and then this way. Okay, so this way and then that way. So we're going to go lighter and pinker now. And it's a very complicated transition here, this one that we're painting at the moment, because the transition from here to here, okay, this is darker relative to pretty much all of this. This is lighter relative to this, but it's still darker relative to all of this. You can only really get that kind of subtlety from standing back. So each time I make a mark like this, I'm going to stand back. Okay, alright, so now probably going to be a little silent now because this area is very complex, so I have to focus. It was too warm. I cool that down. See how I still haven't really put much attention into the details around the eyes? For lack of a better word. So now I'm going to darken the area beneath the lower eyelid. A little too green. Okay. Now going back to the lighter values, again with the flake white, a little bit of pink, gonna have to use more flake white, cadmium red, oops, okay. So it's getting pinker over here and lighter relative to pretty much all of this. But now, as I continue to move down, it's going to get pinker and darker, but very, very subtle. Pinker, darker, down here. Now it's going to get lighter and cooler. Over here. Okay. Now it's going to get a little darker and a little warmer. Underneath of here. Oh, where was I? You ever do that? You forget where you're painting. All right, over here. Darker over here. All right. So now I'm going to start to put some information in for the sclera. I'm going to use a smaller brush. Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to take right from here. Now I'm using a synthetic. Why? Because I don't want to apply too much paint. I'm actually going to move this further out that way. The value is very important, okay? The value is not that light. So I'm going to stand back just to double check that. And it's okay. It's not too light. It's not too cold. Whoops. Just don't want there to be too much paint there. Okay, so here, how about over here? Just a little bit of light here. Cool. All right, so now a little bit of flesh tone. So now we are pretty much transitioning into the smaller plane stage. All right, so not just yet though. I'm going to put in the dark now for all of these shapes. Now before I jump right into the smaller shapes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover now all of the dark around here. This is the same brush that I used for all of this. Notice how, you know, my finger is not wiping off the paint. Now we're pretty safe. See that? So now we're pretty safe to layer right on top of the dark. So hopefully you can see this. Okay, I'm going to use the ivory black over here with the burnt umber. Ivory black and burnt umber. And the burnt umber, just to make sure you know that we don't go too dark with any of these shapes. So we'll start pretty much down here. So one dark shape over there, and maybe we'll put another, I don't know, right over here. Now you see how useful the drawing was in the beginning, the preliminary drawing, to block in. Still no medium. And I'm starting off, you know, just kind of around the face. I'm using this to also help facilitate the drawing. I don't really see much here for the shadow, so I'm just going to paint it as I see it. Kind of just blends into the background. And over here, this is all dark. But again, that's also relative to the pictures I'm using. It could look completely different in person, but I don't know. That's why I didn't put the picture in the description, because you can probably find a better one to use for yourself, or you've probably already found a better one. Okay, alright, so there's a little bit of a dark shape here. That much I can see. Alright, so now there's going to be a darker, so I'm going to use more paint. Still a little to no medium. Paint down here. I'm going to make sure not to, crop in this corner, just because compositionally that just kind of, I don't like. Alright, so now we got that. Let's get the hair. And I really don't see much there. I mean, I see kind of, let's get the darker flesh tone brush. I see kind of a little bit of light over here. So I'm using the darker flesh tone brush just to put in a little bit of light there. But I mean, other than that, I really don't see much. Now I'm gonna get a, let's get the drawing brush. So this is the drawing brush. Not going to use any, well, actually, never mind, scratch that. I'm going to clean it off with the odorless mineral spirits a little bit. So I'm cleaning this brush off camera with the odorless mineral spirits, okay? And I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to let the mineral spirits kind of dissipate, and then I'm going to use it for these darks. Now I'm being very cautious with how I apply the paint. I'm making sure that the drawing, the preliminary drawing, shows so that you can see kind of an underpainting. Even though we didn't use a traditional underpainting, we can at least make it look like we did. Alright, so now that we have the main areas blocked in here and here with the large shapes of color, now is the time to use medium. So I'm going to use a little bit of medium, more burnt umber. Now we'll use the medium to get kind of some texture and just to cover more rapidly. We'll also use the medium for some other things later on. I'm actually going to throw a little bit of yellow ochre and cadmium red just to lighten up the tone here as it appears in the picture. Now Velázquez is no joke, so that's why I'm being a little more cautious with my paint handling. I know one of my tendencies is to use too much medium, so that's why I went with pretty much no medium for a long time. So again, just a little bit of the cadmium red and yellow ochre in with the dark mixture that we already had before. And the hair, to be honest, really just kind of blends in, at least with the picture that I'm using, with the dark of the background. So I'm just gonna let it blend in the painting. A little more of the red and the yellow ochre. So yeah, I'm just gonna let it blend in. So now, of course, it's a little darker underneath here, all of this stuff here. So I'm going to use more of the ivory black in the paint and medium. And I'm gonna make a vignette here. So I'm gonna let the paint be much thinner over here in the corner. So I'm gonna let some of these brush strokes show through, just like that. All right, so I actually see a little edge thing. So I'm gonna soften this edge here. At a distance, it looked a little too sharp. And hopefully that brush from earlier, hopefully the mineral spirits is gone. Yeah, it's pretty much evaporated. So I'm gonna use the dark, so the burnt umber, the ivory black. Mostly burnt umber, to be honest. Looks like there's still some mineral spirits on it. I didn't wait long enough. So, I'm gonna have to use a much smaller brush, which is fine. And over here. A little more burnt umber. A little bit of alizarin permanent. Right over there. Just to kind of establish the darks. Then after this we'll get into the smaller shapes. So over here. Ideally a larger brush, okay? But my larger brush wasn't clean. And ideally at this point still, I would be using bristles. But I kind of ran out. So if you got more brushes, use them. It's a little dark over here. Alright, so now we'll get into the smaller shapes. Alright, so now with the smaller shapes, I'm going to switch to synthetic brushes. So I'm in the darker, hopefully you can see this, darker middle tone region of the color value web. I'm going to return to this dark shape here. Now I am using a little bit of medium so that I can get the paint to layer. But remember, thinner paint tends to stick onto thicker paint. So that's why I'm using the medium now. So I did say earlier, I would tell you when I switch into using medium and then tell you why. So I'm using medium and that's why. And the hair actually goes down here. Okay. It's actually much darker over here. Okay. There's actually a little more of a glimpse of light over here. Single brush stroke time. Or at least we'll make it look like a single brush stroke. Now darker and warmer over here. I believe this could have even been his underpainting that he let the show through. Remember the awesome factor? Letting the underpainting show through. So now that we are in the smaller plane stage, I'm probably going to be very quiet since I'm trying to focus as much as I can on the painting. Softer edge there. But I will whisper to you once in a while. Gotta make sure that edge is soft. Yeah, Velázquez's edge quality is incredible. Softer here. So much to learn here from Velázquez. Now a little bit darker and warmer. Well, darker relative to the flush tones. Lighter relative to the hair. Warmer relative to pretty much everything else. Putting in that shape. Alright, before I spend too long on the features up here, I'm going to start to move down. I'm going to push this dark now. At the same time, try to get the red for his nose, or I guess the pinkish right over here. So I've definitely switched to synthetics now, as we're in the smaller plane stage, just because they don't really, they don't add much more paint, but they're really useful for kind of pushing the paint around and kind of steering the paint more specific. Now we're going to use a much thicker application of paint, if it can even work with a synthetic brush. Kind of. The light on the side of the nose. And over here. Trying to emulate the brush strokes of a true master. There. And a little bit over here. And it's going to get darker and more pink down towards here. And then just darker basically underneath. A little bit of a darker, warmer shape above here. There's a little bit more shape here than I gave him credit for. And I'm standing back a lot. I just stood back again. Pretty much every time you see this brush lift, I'm standing back. Standing back now. So see how with the synthetic brush, I'm kind of sculpting out the paint now. I'm trying to get this little shape here for his nasal bone. Something is wrong here with his nose. So I'm basically just trying to figure out what the problem is and then address it. So the way I'm approaching the problem is by looking at the contour. And occasionally I'll stand back and look at my camera screen. That also helps me see what the problems could be. I think it's just here. And that was just a brushstroke made on faith, hoping that pushing that in would help. Alright, so now this shape here. That moment when you're painting and your eye itches. Okay, so after standing back, okay. Now I'm just kind of lightly scattering the paint over here just to get this shadow tone. Now I'm going to push darker over here. Probably too red. So I'm going to make it a little more green. One color I didn't end up using really is the ultramarine blue. Just noticed on my palette. So now I'm going to get the brush that I use for the sclera color and adjust that shape a little bit. I clean that brush off with a little bit of mineral spirits. Load it up with burnt umber. I feel like I'm almost having a conversation with Velázquez. He's telling me not too much thinner. Don't use too much thinner. Alright, some more sap green, just to cool down the temperature. And of course that iris needs to grow a little bit. Now I'm going to try to soften this edge. We're going to put a little bit of a darker transition here for the sclera, just so the sclera doesn't appear too flat. Alright, so now it's a little bit of a darker and more red tone. I'm going to push the value here for the tear duct. So I got an interesting question for you as I'm putting in this dark shape. If you could time travel to any old master or any painter's studio from the past and watch them work, watch them paint for a day, which painter would you choose and why? I'll give you my answer. If I could time travel to the past to watch any painter work for a day, it would most likely be Sargent, John Singer Sargent, just because I really do enjoy his the look his paintings have in terms of the alla prima quality. The loose brushiness about it, yet still how accurate his paintings were and are. So that would be my answer. So go ahead, comment down below if you could time travel and watch any artist from the past work for a day. which artist would you choose? Alright, so now after standing back, I really have to decide. Okay, so the edges. Okay, so I'm going to soften again over here. We're going to put some more definition. Let's just soften all of this. I realize as I just did that, this is no longer a clean and dry synthetic brush, but that's okay. I actually see a little mistake. I can make the chin even higher. And I guess more to the side. Now I'm going to use the same brush here. Just kind of blend or soften over here. Okay. Alright. So now, after I adjust the chin again, alright, so now I'm going to put more specificity there, but I'm actually going to switch back to the bristle with the thicker paint. Whoops. So we're going to have to go up in value, a little bit cooler under here, the bottom of the orbicularis. So another way to get a really clean gradation of tone with a single brush stroke, or I guess to make it look like a single brush stroke, is with a large brush with lots of paint. The paint's just gliding. Alright, hopefully the that larger brush, or I guess not larger, but that size 2 brush, this one, hopefully it doesn't have too much mineral spirits. Finally, it's cooperating. Sometimes some brushes just go rogue on me. Can't explain why. Alright, darker here. Constantly standing back. Alright, back to that synthetic brush, or sorry, bristle brush. Now we're just going to lightly put in this plane. Extremely subtle now. It's all down to the values. And I'll put it in a more modern sense. Subtlety is really, whatchamacallit, subtlety is what we're after, and value is how we obtain it. A little bit darker here. Sometimes at this point I'm forgetting what to say, so that's why I'm just being much more quiet. And because I'm much more focused. Alright, so now again, it's a little bit of a darker tone there. Alright, so with the middle tone brush, we're now going to put in that shape that confused me earlier. Well, this didn't confuse me. I'll tell you what confused me. So this is the neck going down towards the this item of clothing, clothing that he's wearing. And then it just kind of blends in. Okay, this makes sense. All right, just blends into there. But what's this? I guess that's the back of his neck. I don't get it, but it is what it is. It's the back of his neck. And now we're just going to take the burnt umber, just kind of blend it into here. And by blending, I mean just softening. Okay. That's softening down here. Now we're going to go up in value. Whoops. Okay, that's not good. There. Alright, I'm going to switch to the lighter bristle brush just to kind of get a softer transition here. Okay, so back to that area I didn't really understand. Back of his neck. Softening. It's a little bit warmer. I guess that's probably the underpainting showing through here. So we'll just paint it in warmer. Again, a little lighter over here. As this just blends in all of these shapes. And so we're going to blend a little bit more in here, just to soften that shape. So really, really soft edge for the chin. Seems like I'm struggling the most with this chin. Can't really say why. Don't know. Okay, so now I'm going to push the light on the top plane of his chin a little bit more. Once I find my brush, where is my brush? Okay, so once I find my lighter flesh tone bristle brush, which I have here now. All right, so now I'm going to push the hairline down a tiny bit. just the tiniest bit there. Now I'm going to get the middle tone brush, darker middle tone bristle brush, make it a little bit cooler. Now we're going to get this edge here. Okay, so I want this edge to be softer, mainly because, as I usually say, the hairline edge is usually the softest and the most delicate. Just because if you leave it too sharp, if you leave this sharp, it's going to look like he has a wig on. There's nothing wrong with wigs, I just don't think he was wearing one. I really hope that I can take what I'm learning from this study into my own paintings, and that's the goal with master studies, to learn as much as we can from the masters and incorporate that in the artworks of the future. But I'll tell you the biggest thing, really, biggest difference between back then and now in terms of painting and technique is photo reference, unfortunately. But there is a way to use photo reference, such as what we're doing here, you know, and what you're doing at home or in your own studio. You know, there's a way to use photo references that, you know, you're not sacrificing too much of the quality of your painting. Such as training yourself to interpret and not to copy. Seems to be a lot of copying, I think, these days from the aesthetic of the photograph, and I think we should learn how to design, you know, from life, from observing things, and then use the photograph just for reference. And not the photograph as an end result. Even though I don't see it, I'm going to put in a little bit of a glimpse of the back of his hair, because I'm pretty sure that it would be there somewhere. Somewhere over here. We're just going to soften all around here. Just put a little bit of the back of his hair. And then soften up here. I'm going to get the halftone brush again. Just keep pushing these planes. Whoops, I'm going to lighten that value. Very subtlety. Very, very subtle. Did I say very subtlety? I don't know, I'm confused with my words. I'm just trying to put in this subtle plane here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is look for another clean synthetic brush, and I'm just going to pat down these very thick areas of impasto. Just so they don't dry too, like, I don't know what's the word. It's just so that when it dries here, it doesn't dry with like the paint kind of like hanging off the canvas, if that makes any sense. And we're back to the chin. Moving this up even more. I guess it's because my tendency is to make chins too long, and his chin is much shorter. Okay, so I'm going to switch to the size 2 bristle. Softening the edges as we go. The shape can actually come out a little further. Okay, so now I'm going to push the corner of the lip in a little bit. And now with a smaller brush, I get a little bit of a middle pink tone up here. I don't know why, but this looks like a very stylish brush stroke that he put there. Then a little bit of a top plane over here. Still not too light. A little darker and more red over here. And now darker and more red for the back side of the wing of the nose. A little less red, a little darker. Bottom of the wing of the nose. A little less red and a little more dark. Okay. All right, now let's revisit the mustache. Once I find my brush. A bit of a softer edge. I'm gonna have to get a different brush, a little bit cooler, a little darker, a little bit of a half tone here. Now this has to go up. I'm actually going to get a smaller brush again for that, so we get the individual hairs just like he painted it. It's interesting. He chose to put more focus on the mustache. You even see the little strands of hair here. Whereas, you know, like the nose or something, or the mouth are much less rendered. So he must have been very proud of this mustache. Pretty cool looking mustache. So we're going to continue to soften these edges. I think Velázquez is really teaching us a lot about edge. I mean, look how nuanced, how carefully nuanced this edge is. It's hard to describe. It's like soft and sharp at the same time. I don't know how to describe it. And this is pretty much how I learn. Most of the stuff that you've seen from me, I've learned by doing things like this. You know, master studies of Sargent's, Bouguereau, Alma Tadema, Waterhouse. Alright, so there's still a little more nuanced plane here. Whoops. A little bit lighter and warmer. Okay. And again, I'm trying to get a darker tone here to soften that edge. Very tricky, this edge. Okay, so now that I have that intermediate value, I'm going to look for another one of my synthetic brushes, clean and dry, continue to soften. These edges are no joke, very difficult to obtain. I wish I could say this was simple and easy, but it's not. It's really taking all of my tools and making me invent some new ones. even over here, it's not as sharp. It's those delicate little touches. I'm going to leave it sharper there. I'm going to get a little more light on the chin. I'll try to get it as a single brush stroke. A little bit of a darker transition there. It's a little tiny darker shape underneath of the eye. So delicate. So I'm going to make a little bit of a lighter, pinker tone. Lighter, more pink over here. Perhaps that's a little too chromatic. And neutralize it a little bit. So subtle. Sclera was jumping out at me a little bit. So we have a little bit of a darker gray with a little bit of flesh tone. Let's make it a little darker. Now a little bit lighter. As I usually say, the sclera is not, it's not white in terms of value. Velázquez definitely nailed whatever value this is. A little more body to the mustache. Now I'm going to get the soft brush. Just soften this edge. I also want to make sure it's not too perfect of a curve. So right now, see how this, I don't know, I feel like that's too perfect of a curve. This might actually, this might need to angle more this way. So I want to get the dark brush that I was using for the mustache, even the mustache. We're considering the structure and the planes, and in this case the angle of it. So if you've made it this far and you're still listening to me, I know that this is a long video and it's okay if you're skipping around. I probably would too. It's a very long video. So let's insert something for you to comment if you are a very attentive listener. So if you are still listening, go ahead in the comments and comment down, "It's all in the mustache." Or how about hashtag "It's all in the mustache." And after I'm done with this painting, I'm going to go to the comments section. I'm going to look at the previous videos and I will respond to your comments. So now a little bit more of a transition here of tone. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit, even more, lighter and cooler. Now then, the shape of the nostril even has a more distinct curve to it than I was giving it. So let's get that curve. So I'm going to get the darker, kind of darker reddish tone from the Color Valley web. I did use a little bit of the medium just to get the paint to stick a little more, like so. And a little darker and more red. We're kind of losing the back of the nose here, the nostril. There we go. And there's even a little tiny turning plane right here. A little bit lighter shape here, just to round out the wing of the nose a tiny bit. Now we're going to move up in the value scale. Getting very subtle now. And I'm even going to adjust the shape in the corner of the eye over here. It is a little more nuanced than I have. Cooler and darker here. It kind of curves a little more. This is another thing Velázquez teaches us, where to put the attention. It looks like this is a very, well-defined area. I'm talking about the structure underneath of the eye. It's a little bit more nuance here than up here. And now a lighter and more pink color, just to get a softer transition here for the lips. And it looks like there's a little light shape. I'm not sure what it is. but we're going to paint it in there under here. And then while we have this value, I'm just going to make it a little bit cooler. Even the eyebrows. Have a turning plane. So a little bit of medium is going to be used now to get this paint to layer. Like so. Now I'm going to get a synthetic brush just to soften this transition. And now we are back to the larger shot where you can see the entire painting. And I just put you in the larger shot just so you can see again the chin, that stubborn chin. I keep struggling with the chin. I think I just need to round it a little bit more. There. So a little bit more round. I'm going to stand back and double check. So after rounding it, I'm going to get the size 2 bristle brush, and we're going to put in a little bit of a darker tone. I do think that there is a little more of a turning value here, or half tone, that I wasn't seeing before. This is probably the most difficult chin I've ever painted, and I have no idea why. So a little bit darker. A little bit more of a turning value here. Now I'm going to stand back and observe it from a distance. It's getting a little closer, I think. Oops. Alright, softening brushes, where are you? Alright, I'm going to soften this. Still trying to make sure not to lose this plane, however. I'm just going to add some paint on this brush. This is no longer a softening brush. Make sure we don't lose this plane. I'm going to go back. A little bit of a darker middle tone over here. This is very, very difficult. Not going to lie. And now we're going to add a little more definition to his chin. Alright, so now I'm going to switch to a dark brush again. Now we're going to soften. Whew, and it has been a lot of painting, a lot of footage. It looks like my camera didn't fail. you know, not to jinx it. I just bumped into it, but not to jinx it. But now I'm just going to soften a few more edges over here. Then I'm going to take a little break. Then I'm going to come back and then reevaluate the painting. What I usually do before calling a painting completed is take a break from it. So, you know, after I soften this edge here, I'm going to go out for lunch. Then I'm going to come back. Gonna have some gluten-free pasta. Then I'll be back. Say hi to my bearded dragon. Pet my chihuahua. Just getting away from the painting. Okay, so if you are painting along with me, also take this as an invitation to go out for lunch or dinner or breakfast, whatever time it may be. Maybe play some video games. Or just have some time apart from the painting, okay? So I'm going to stand back one more time. Still, I feel like I can soften a little more over here. I'll stand back again. Okay, a little more over here. Okay, so after this, I'm going to take a maybe 30-minute to an hour long break, but for you, it's going to be the blink of an eye. Right about now. All right, I just came back from my lunch break, and everything looks pretty good. I mean, it's not a perfect replica of the Velázquez self-portrait, which is not what I intended to do. This works pretty well, I think, for a master study. There's one last little shape. I think this will be the last one that I'm going to adjust, and it's going to be the mouth. So over here, there's a little angle here that I can delineate. A little more specificity. Again, just taking from the darker, more red region of the color value web, admittingly with a little bit of medium just so that it layers on very nicely. And then for the accent, where the upper lip meets the lower lip, over here, just a little bit though. So I don't think there's very much to it. Then this meets with the bottom of the mustache. I'm gonna have to switch hues to a cooler, darker hue. The mustache comes all the way down here. Okay. So yeah, I think that the mouth just around here was, or is one of the last areas that I'm going to be retouching. And I think that's going to be about good. Let me just move the camera closer to front and center so you can see the painting with the least amount of distortion possible. There we go. And there you have it. And with that being said, I really do hope that today's episode helps you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork. And if you would like to support this channel even more, I have a Patreon account where you can continue to support these videos and you will receive some things in return, such as critiques, live chats, and even live stream. I'm actually preparing to do my first live stream through the Patreon. So if you would like to see me painting live, that is something you will be able to see on the Patreon. That being said, always remember, in a world that can be so negative, be the spark that ignites positivity amongst all of us. I do hope that today's episode helps you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork. If you liked it, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more of my videos, please feel free to subscribe. If you absolutely hated it, you can dislike it if you like. Alright, that being said, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on Wednesday. And it's time for our new patron shout out. Thank you so much, Barbara Hockey. I hope I can pronounce your name properly. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but thank you so much for your support. I am eternally grateful for your support on my Patreon account. It really does help out so much. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll be back again on Wednesday.